Welcome back to the channel. We are still doing driver versus driver. Obviously, the last TaylorMade video went awesome. The CalerMade video went really good too. This time, we're going to take a look at something else, LS drivers. We got the Qi35 LS going all the way back to the OG carbon face Stealth Plus. We're going to put them head to head. Two tests for you today. 100 miles an hour, and we're doing that for a reason, because you asked for it. But Mark will lead into it why it might not be the best test.
Yeah, well, 100 miles an hour on the LS, right? So we actually tried to hit up on it to help a little bit. But the problem is, it's really not designed for 100 miles an hour unless you really hit it high. So you kind of get very little spin. Obviously, 100 miles an hour, you don't see quite the ball speed changes and other things you do. Everything's kind of exponential. But you guys asked for it, so we figured to give it a shot and kind of show you.
Right, and this is proof for you. So do you need an LS driver at 100 miles an hour? We're going to show you that. Second part of the test is we've run our full scientific test verified by Dr. Tom Mace at 115 miles an hour, zero path, zero face, zero angle of attack. And we got some really interesting data there, especially for you high-speed players who want to keep it on the golf course. Stay tuned for that. Let us know in the comments how we're doing below, if you like the videos, where we need to go with them, what we should test. We love it. We live off that feedback. We're going to keep doing what you want us to do. Before we crack into this 100 mile an hour test, I want to give a shout out to Adidas Originals. They just dropped this week. We're actually shooting this the week of the Masters, so we're all hyped up, and the green and white makes sense, at least for now.
Unfortunately, we can't see the shoes.
The shoes, right? We're going to get some B-roll in there for the shoes. Right. But head to Worldwide Golf retail locations, head to worldwidegolf.com to purchase this Adidas Originals gear. It's really, really slick. We love it. Thank you so much, Adidas. Okay, let's get into the test. So what we're going to do with 100 mile an hour is hit 2 degrees up, like you said, give it a fair chance. And we're just going to hit this out the middle. The forgiveness at 100 miles an hour, we're going to save that for the high-speed test so we actually see some spray, right?
Right.
Okay, first things first, Qi35 LS, 9 degree, 2 degrees up, zero face, zero path. Glenn, let's do it. And maybe Mark, you can lead into like what we'd expect to see at 100 miles an hour with these LS heads. Right.
Well, we're going to see relatively low spin, obviously, right? Because we just don't have enough spin to put on it. And we're hitting up on it, so that helps a little bit on the launch angle. Yep. But also not going to launch as high either, because the CG's not as far back.
Yep.
So, and actually I have improved that quite a bit. They've moved the CG back quite a bit on this thing, so it's better.
Yep.
But definitely just not, ideal.
For 100 miles an hour.
Right.
So let's just take a quick look. Glenn nailed the speed, 100 miles an hour, 147 ball speed, so that's an easy equation, 1.47 smash factor.
Yep.
And then the spin rate here, 1672.
Yeah, falling out of the sky.
Right, we just see that nosedive.
And by the way, if you really shouldn't be looking at the distance numbers on all these things, because obviously getting the right launch and spin are really key. So you're testing two drivers at 100 miles an hour, which probably not what we're going to use it for. You really just can't look at those numbers. What we do look at is ball speed is important, right?
Yep.
How forgiving they are when we start hitting off center, and some other things. Even at 100 miles an hour, you can tell.
Yeah. Well, this will give an apples-to-apples comparison between the two heads at the lower speed, which is why we're doing this. But we're really doing this to show you, if you're at 100 miles an hour and you're not hitting up on it 8 degrees, you should probably be playing another model.
Yeah, I'm kind of borderline. I'm up like 5,
yeah.
And I can probably get away with it. 9 degree head even, but I don't need it, so why not go with something more forgiving?
More forgiving, right. Okay, well, let's snap in the Stealth Plus and see what it is head-to-head with the LS. Okay, so the Stealth. This was notoriously low spin.
Yep.
And the face was more about consistency, which we won't see in this test.
Right.
But let's see what it does compared to the LS. Straight down the middle, 100 mile an hour, 2 up. Wow.
That's what we kind of saw, though. Little fade biased, right?
True, I didn't think about that, right.
Yep.
We're going to get into that when we get into the 115 test, into the nuts and bolts, so stay around. But we saw a little more fade bias, even with this dead center shot, 100 miles an hour, tilt plus 6.3, so that's a decent amount of fade there.
Yeah.
And then we've actually seen exactly on the nose 100 miles an hour speed and about 1 mile an hour less ball speed at 100 miles an hour.
Well, that's a pretty good improvement, right? I mean, more ball speed is more distance, potential distance, right? I mean, obviously you got to get a launch and spin right, but definitely that's a big one.
Okay, and that's a scale, right? So if you're swinging at 100 and you get 1 miles an hour,
the
faster
120 you probably get 2, right? So it's not just like every little bit; it's exponential. The higher you get speed and stuff, all those numbers get amplified quite a bit.
Just more evidence why you need speed to play these drivers.
Yep.
Again, we saw a little more spin out of this 1863 in this case compared to the new version of the LS. But still, 1,800 RPMs launching at 9 degrees is not enough to give you what you need.
Not at 9 degrees. I mean, 1,800 is great if you can launch it at like 15, 16, right? That's kind of optimal. But no, 9 degrees is not going to do it.
No. Okay, well, hopefully that gave you some evidence and gives you some inspiration to go and purchase a driver that suits you at your speed and stick away from these tour player drivers unless they're absolutely necessary, really.
Yeah.
Now, let's jump into this 115 mile an hour test data, Mark. I'm going to start with some numbers. I'm going to give you the fun stuff to talk about.
Okay.
So if we just look at the lie angle, we've got 2 degrees flatter in the new version than the Stealth Plus.
Yeah, I mean, most better players want to see it flatter. They don't want to see the toe up.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's a nice bonus. I mean, it makes it look cleaner.
Yep.
And that actually negates, you know, it makes it a little more fade biased, if anything, because it's a little flat, or actually, you know, a little flatter than the newer one, right?
Yep.
So, you know, it's a change in the design.
But what they did, and to kind of offset that lie angle a little bit, is we saw a lot of TaylorMades, especially really in the last 3 models, where fade was the more predominant shot.
Right.
And we saw that with the Stealth Plus, even in this small test.
Right.
But what they've done is they've squared the face angle up in all of the models of the Qi35. So that's going to help like neutralize that lie angle offset.
Yeah, the newer one is nowhere near as fade biased as the old one.
Right.
Right. And you can always add fade. That's easy. Open the face. You know, you can put more weight out towards the toe. You can do that. But it's basically they're making these new drivers, you know, a little more neutral.
Yeah.
Even in the Tour version.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
MOI actually is a slightly higher, and this is where technology is going. In the new version, heel to toe a little bit higher, so more stable there.
You would think actually a higher MOI means a deeper CG, like you're looking at here. Right.
And it is. It is the deeper CG. So the CG in the Stealth Plus is 0.67 inches back from the shaft axis.
Right.
The Qi35 is 0.87 inches.
It's quite a bit. It's 25% further back.
Yeah.
I mean, that's substantial.
So we're talking about stability. And remember that when we get to Mark's fun portion, stability in the Qi35 LS, in theory, is higher than the Stealth Plus.
Absolutely.
The big one here we want to talk about, we saw it tiny bit in that 100 mile an hour test, ball speed. 166.9 in the LS at 115 miles an hour, 165.3.
That's substantial. You know, that's 100 miles an hour, right? So that's some
115. This
115. 115. Yeah, that's substantial. I mean, that's 7-8 yards, right? That's a lot.
Yep.
You know, you're only talking about a couple. You're talking about a 4-year-old driver, not a 40-year-old driver, right?
Yep.
So any increase over the last 5 years is substantial,
Okay.
and that's a real amount.
And that's when you're seeing carbon face technology. That wasn't a switch from titanium to carbon, or like it's just the evolution of their face technology is improving as we go forward.
Right, and some of the other things that would think that would actually hurt that is the deeper CG typically lowers ball speed.
True.
Right, so they've, and everything's a trade-off.
Yep.
So that's both positives. So that makes quite a bit of a difference too.
Yeah. The washout is that the launch and spin were pretty close. The new version launched a little lower than the old version, so that helps on this test at least.
And it spun a little less because of that.
Right. And then we saw basically 292 carry even for the both drivers. So even with the higher ball speed, the launch characteristics, and this highlights again why it's so important to get fit, get the right weight set up, get the right hosel set up, because the launch characteristics mean a lot more than just ball speed alone.
Yeah, and if you match those exactly with the 1.5 mile an hour ball speed, you're going to get 5 or 7 yards, right? You're going to get something. And we're not seeing that because the launch position parameters aren't exactly right on both of these.
Yeah.
Right, so trade-off.
Big one to note here, center tilt. So from the center strike, the Stealth Plus was tilted 2 degrees to the right. It's going to produce a little fade. The Qi35 LS was basically nuts on center, just right down.
Which is a great way to start, because you do have adjustments in the driver to be able to go more right and more left. Before, it was pretty heavily right to begin with, so you might get back to neutral, but if you had trouble drawing it, that would be difficult with the old one.
Yeah, definitely more easy to turn over this new
You've got a bit wider range of what you can do with it.
And you can see on the screen here the toe drop and the heel drop, but I'm going to let Mark have some fun with the graphs. Talk about them.
Yeah, basically you don't see a lot of difference in how much distance you dropped off, but the right to left is completely different, right? And it's almost half the dispersion right and left.
Yeah.
So it's kind of misleading a little bit. If you look at the numbers, you say, okay, the drop-off's about the same, and one might even be a little higher or lower, but the size when you look at the graphs, it's a big difference.
So we see the ellipse of the Stealth Plus at about 1,200 square yards, I think that is.
Right.
And we go to the Qi35 LS and we see 646.
Say call 650.
So it's almost half the amount of space in the fairway. And this is like the robot swinging square, square, square. Doesn't take into account any human adding into that miss.
No, it's just better consistency, really, is what it is,
Yeah.
right? I mean, obviously the mishits are going, the same distance shorter, but their right to left is way better. So, I mean, that's a big improvement.
So here's who this driver is obviously aimed at. So we know that higher speed, we just demonstrated that with the speed and the spin characteristic. We know that higher speed players aren't all flushing it in the center. So there's this like beautiful mix, especially in this new model where they've managed to like get the launch and spin in the right place, increase ball speed, and dramatically improve the amount of fairways that player is going to be able to find.
No question about that. I mean, right to left is way better, and that's really important.
Yeah.
You really don't see this much difference in a lot of the other drivers, and I think the reason for that is, as I mentioned, a couple times, them going to a carbon face is a bit of a step backwards to some extent because everyone's already at the limit, kind of with the titanium.
Yeah.
But they got more room, and you're seeing, pretty big improvements with the TaylorMade here. So, it's kind of interesting.
If this was the leap that they've taken here, and they put in one more piece of the puzzle. Who knows?
Yeah, but there's not just the leap in ball speed. I mean, they've moved the CG back. They've raised MOI, which is the opposite, right? You move the CG back, you lose speed. But they didn't. They moved the CG back and gained speed. So both those together is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that might be a little high level, but it really is basically everything working in your favor, basically. So, this story is really about being able to trade in your product. At worldwide golf retail locations, you can go in there with your Stealth Plus after seeing this data, know confidently that you should be able to move pretty well easily with some fitting tweaks into this Qi35 LS and have a much, much better result.
Yeah, I mean, that 1.5 mile hour ball speed is, like I said, it's 5 or 6 yards easily. So as long as you dial in the spin and launch and get the right and left kind of figured out as far as draw bias, fade bias, you've got a lot of adjustments in these things. I mean, that's one of the advantages of the Tour Head. You can really dial that in. So if you dial these both in correctly, you would see the new one is probably, at least 5 yards longer.
At least. Head to a worldwide golf retail location, get fit, make a purchase of the new TaylorMade Qi35 LS. It's going to destroy the Stealth Plus. You're going to hit more fairways. You're going to have more distance if you get it all tied up. You can also come to a CoolClubs location and have your tour experience fitting with one of our master fitters who have been doing this for years, and they're going to treat you like a tour pro out there. Also, a shameless plug for the Adidas Originals collection.
You look good today.
Right, thank you. Yeah, everyone.
Very mastery.
I've taken some stick for wearing all green around the Masters, but these guys have killed it in the apparel section. So head to Worldwide Golf and purchase your Adidas Original stuff today.